From Perth, Australia, and broadcasting around the world, you're listening to The O Show with your host, Oren McCory. The O Show is a no-nonsense podcast bringing you the best advice on training, mindset, and nutrition to supercharge your efforts in the gym, the kitchen, and most importantly, in your head. Don't forget to share this episode on your social media. Now, let's get to it.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, guys. Welcome to today's episode of The O Show. And this is a special one, guys. We're doing this one live on Zoom with a bunch of my clients, and we're all here to discuss Mairi's awesome progress last year. You'll have seen her photos plastered all over my Instagram at various stages, either the before and after pictures or the actual photo shoot pictures in the green sort of singlet top. She pushed through what was probably the hardest circumstances ever last year, an extended lockdown from March until August, I want to say, when it ended, about 6 months of lockdown. And she'd done a photo shoot 3 weeks after lockdown ended there and looked incredible. Honestly, some of the best pictures that I've produced with a client. So I thought we would jump on here and we'd talk about who is Mairi, what she does, what she likes to do, what she does for a living, what she likes to do, her different hobbies, the different tips and strategies that we implemented, and sort of her biggest lessons along the way, so that people here on the call as clients or people listening to the podcast can take something from this and hopefully get inspiration, motivation, or just those little nuggets that Mairi's going to throw out. So Mairi, welcome to the podcast. That was an extended introduction, but you're very welcome to the O Show today.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, I'm quite excited.
It's we've talked about this a while. We've done a very, very short version, probably just after you done the shoot on our little weekly huddles. But I thought this deserved a proper format. I have sent you some questions over, but it's still going to be quite loose and off the cuff. I just wanted you to see the general structure of this. But the last time was nothing compared to this. We're going to go in deep and we're going to give people some big help on this. So let's start with, who is Mairi? What do you do for work? What are your hobbies? Just talk about yourself as a person before we get into training and diet and mindset and all that good stuff.
All right. Well, hello, everyone. Thank you all for having me on the show. Nice to see such a good turnout. Definitely no pressure given the attendance we had for Annika's recently. But yeah, my name is Mairi. I am 28 years old. I'm living and working in Edinburgh in Scotland. What I like to do when we're not stuck in a pandemic lockdown is go out to eat with my friends. I really enjoy cocktails at the weekends. Not really too much of a social life, to be honest. I'm very much a creature of habit. So I like going to the gym during the week, sticking to a routine. But yeah, the last sort of 12 months have been totally overruled by COVID, as I'm sure everyone's have. But yeah, kind of just socializing, seeing friends and family, and chilling out when I'm not working.
Yeah, nice.
For work, I work in risk for a bank. So I try and help the organisation not take on too much risk as part of its day-to-day activities. So yeah, I'm a risk manager.
So quite a high-profile job, probably has its moments of high stress, probably some long hours, some early starts, late finishes. Obviously, when you work commuting as well, and when that becomes a thing again, that's going to be added stress. But during lockdown, how was that role for you? Let's just give people an idea of what lockdown looked for you when you were doing this. Like, how was the stress of working from home during that lockdown?
It really varied, to be honest, sort of like peaks and troughs. There was definitely periods where it felt quite manic and periods where it was the opposite. I was rolling out of bed at 2 minutes past 9 to log on in my pajamas. And I think that changed throughout the period. Like, not having a routine can make things quite difficult. So it's hard to focus at home. Your entire surroundings are different. A lot of my job is decision making, and when you're in an office environment, you can bounce ideas off your colleagues, you can read the tone of a room. There's a lot that you pick up on when suddenly you're plunged into homeworking. It's very isolated. And I've had like moments of worrying that I'm not making a really robust decision because I'm just not concentrating in the same way that I would in an office. So it's been quite an adjustment. But yeah, my job, it varies in terms of like how busy you are. Things always seem to happen at once, or you have quite a quiet spell. So it's trying to manage your time effectively throughout either of those circumstances.
Okay, nice. So from what we've talked about for the past couple of minutes, a lot of people are going to be relating to this, whether it's the guys on the call here now, or whether it's people who are listening. You've got a normal job, which, you know, is up and down in terms of stress. You've got, you know, normal, you like to do normal things on the weekend. You like to socialize, obviously outside of COVID, socialize, see friends, go for meals. You like to have a couple of drinks. You're a very normal person. Like, you're not fucking Superwoman, right? So we're not talking about, you know, you being in a position where you're not like a pro bodybuilder or somebody who can just train and eat and achieve this amazing result. You've got a life, you've got stuff you like to do. You're a normal person. You sometimes like to sleep in till 2 minutes before your shift starts when you're working from home. You're very, very relatable, I think. So people should be able to see themselves in you and see what is possible as a result of that, I think. So let's talk about problems. And by that, I mean, like, where were you before? And just to give the guys a background, me and Mairi did work together one-to-one when I was still lived in Glasgow. I think it was around 2015, 16, maybe, somewhere around that mark. And then when Mairi moved to Edinburgh, we stopped coaching because I was doing online at the time, but she felt that there was so much going on with the move that she just did her own thing for a couple of years. She came back to the fold December 19. We signed her up with a deposit to start in January, and that's whenever we started the coaching period again. And she's obviously been with the team ever since and done everything we're going to speak about. So let's talk about, let's say, the years between when we stopped coaching the first time round to when you came into the team last January. Where were you at? What did you try? What had you been struggling with? And like, how long had that sort of stuff been affecting you?
Sure. I think some useful context before I even came to PT with you in Glasgow was just to mention that I was diagnosed with polycystic ovary syndrome when I was about 16, 17, which is a bit of a hormone imbalance, which impacts many women, but it has lots of different symptoms. So it doesn't necessarily mean that two people with the same diagnosis will have the same symptoms. But unfortunately for me, struggling with my weight was one of them. So I think when I initially came to work with you, first of all, I had managed to get myself quite lean. I'd lost a lot of weight when I was in my final year of university. I was really proud of that progress. And then my circumstances changed when I graduated. I moved back home to Inverness with my parents. My mum was baking every day, cooking amazing meals. I didn't have access to the gym in the same way. And that change in my routine just kind of snowballed, and my weight was suddenly very out of control in a short period of time. So when I initially came to train with you in Glasgow, I'd sort of hit rock bottom after feeling really proud of my physique and my progress. I then spiraled out of control, was at my heaviest, was feeling really rubbish, and came to work with you. I don't think my head was quite right at that time. I think I thought getting a PT would have ticked the box, and then I would have seen the progress. I wasn't really ready to match the effort required to see any change. So we worked together for a few months, and like you say, other things started to kick off. I had to move through to Edinburgh. I got the job, which at that point was quite full on. We stopped working together, and the changes just kept coming. I think that's a constant throughout everyone's life, is there's always something that's going to be changing. Is it ever really a good time for something, right? So I went through a breakup, which was probably one of the best things that I did. I started to take control over my eating habits. I started to get out of a kind of victim mentality, and those sort of stepping stones combined saw a positive snowball effect where suddenly I started to lose a bit of weight. I felt a lot more confident in myself. I could see the light at the end of the tunnel, and that momentum, once that's behind you, I found that was kind of what kept me going. So I had a few good years. And I think when you contacted me, I was just starting to plateau. My progress had just become a bit stagnant. I was proud of what I'd achieved. I was coming back into a normal weight range, but I hadn't quite tapped into that full potential. When you contacted me to join the team, it was like, are you ready to level up? And I definitely was. So yeah, I'd kind of been really happy, not so happy, was getting back to a good place, and then you were there to sort of elevate me onto the next level.
Yeah, awesome. And to sort of prove that we're not here just to like blow my trumpet here, the first time we worked together, to be honest, I remember we tried so many things, and like some of it worked short term, some of it, we tried loads of different diets. To be honest, you were the first person I ever worked with who had PCOS. So a lot of it was me listening to podcasts and getting people's different opinion on what worked. And like you said, like no two cases are the same. So I could listen to a podcast from like top guys in the world on this, or top guys in the UK at the time. And I was trying to implement what they thought. They said, oh, you shouldn't weight train heavy, or you should, everyone's got their different opinions. And really it is, person dependent. Some people need to train hard and heavy. Some people need to go low carb. Some people need that, it needs to be a lot of medication in terms of like metformin doses and things like that. But I was all finding this out. So like our first time together wasn't perfect, but I think what happened then was that around that December time before Christmas, I was like, right, who would I really like to work with next year? And it was in the back of my mind that I just looked through like old client files. It was in the back of my mind that we hadn't really finished, like we hadn't really like nailed it that time. So I reached out and I said, I was just see a message I sent a few people. I was like, listen, I feel we got more to work on here. Like, do you want to throw something down? I know Christmas is coming up. Do you want to throw something down to secure your spot for next month? And you came in, and the process has been great since then, and we found what works for you. But just I want to emphasize that if somebody listening here does have PCOS, it doesn't mean that this whole formula is going to work for you. And what Mairi shares as to what she found, maybe some of the mindset stuff would be very applicable, but just because this training style or this nutrition or whatever Mairi brings up as her top 3 points doesn't mean that that's exactly going to work for you. You got to do trial and error. You got to see different experts, and you've got to really, hone in on exactly what works for you. So yeah, just to make it clear that we're not just tooting my trumpet in this, we're genuinely deep diving into the struggles. And that was one of the struggles, was that we couldn't work it out at the start. And that probably continued from what you're saying, from when you left coaching and you moved to Edinburgh, like different things happened, job stress, breakups, everything else. But on top of that, you were still trying to find out what really worked for your body too at the same time.
Yeah, it's taken a while. It's taken a while to get here. And I don't know if it is just one thing in isolation. I think we'll come on to that, but it's sometimes the winning combination that you're looking for. But yeah, trial and error, and don't lose hope if you do have a diagnosis, which makes it really difficult, because the best thing you can do is keep trying, don't just settle.
Yeah. And let's talk about, how you were feeling at the times when you reached out, whether it was the first time we started coaching or the second time, whenever you seen that email and you were like, oh, maybe that's good time. And like, what were you going through? What was in your head, and how was the body stuff and trying to work this out? How was it making you feel?
Two very different mindsets, I would say. So the first time I reached out to you for the face-to-face in Glasgow, that was like the lowest I had ever been. I think I was perhaps in denial of how much the negativity surrounding my own self-worth and my own appearance, how much that was impacting me, but it had totally taken a toll on my social life. I didn't really want to socialize. It's a really vicious cycle as well, because if you just feel quite negative about yourself in one area, it can be hard to apply yourself at work. It can be hard to think that you deserve other things. And I remember being really upset. I traveled home to Inverness to see my family for a weekend, and I just couldn't enjoy myself. And they were like, what's up? What's going on? And I didn't want to burst out crying and say, oh, it's because I feel fat. But it was the whole sort of like, I don't know, everything that surrounds that feeling of like, how have I let myself get here? It was a lot of shame, I think, having been lean and feeling so proud and then having lost that. So when I reached out to you, first of all, I was just, probably the worst I felt, which is weird to say now, being in such a positive place looking back, but I was desperate for anything, and I needed someone with knowledge and to give me some guidance. Which also felt weird, because I had successfully become lean myself before. I did have a bit of pride, and I thought, well, I know my body better than other people, and I know how to do this. So am I really going to gain much from having a coach? But I needed something to break the cycle at that point. And then when you contacted me in December 2019, it could have gone either way. Like, I was sort of like debating, no offense, I debated what value it would add, because again, I felt like I knew quite a lot. My social media is absolutely saturated with people giving out information all the time. Half of it's good and half of it's absolute rubbish. But I kind of felt like how much the cost that it's going to be to me, how much am I going to gain? And I did think about it for quite a while and then thought, actually, I've got nothing to lose. I have plateaued. I am ready to take it to the next level. And I'm not an expert in this. So what's the worst that could happen? I train with you for a few months and I either see progress or I don't. I hope that I do see progress. And it was that like multiplier effect. Once you start to see a little bit, you're then, well, I personally got quite addicted to seeing the results. And yeah, it's been great month on month since working with you. It's got better and better. So my mindset the second time round was I'm ready for the challenge. I felt like I was in a place to execute the plan that you gave me, which I probably wasn't able to do first time round. So yeah, I was ready. I'm quite chuffed to have been contacted like that because I was just plodding along on my own. I wasn't tracking my lifts. I wasn't really monitoring my food. I went through phases of my fitness pal on and off. But yeah, I was ready for it. So quite a long journey.
Yeah, and I think like people can relate to both sides of that, right? People will be, especially here on the call, people start with coaching with me for a reason. And a lot of people, it's the same whenever I hire a coach, right? Or a business coach, physique coach, doesn't matter. You sort of have to weigh up the pros and the cons, but you've got to think as well, how much time and energy you're wasting being in that place, whether it's a plateau or anything. So I think it's really honest of you to admit that, well, hang on, I kind of looked at the cost and thought, is it worth it? But then that's a very real emotion to feel when you're hiring a coach, and everyone will have felt that when you're investing in something like this. But I think it's pretty clear that, like you said at the start, you needed to break that cycle. And both times it was like, yes, I know my body pretty well, but what could that extra little kick up the arse really do? So yeah, that's awesome. And that's really brutal honesty. So thank you for that. That's killer. So let's talk about your year, right? The lead up to the photo shoot. So you came on board in January. We started to see some results prior to lockdown. So can you remember roughly whenever you went into lockdown? Because I know we went in at the end of March here, and I think you guys were a week, 10 days, 14 days sort of ahead of us.
I think so, yeah. End of March was the last time I was in the office. So yeah, I think it kicked in then.
Okay, so we might have not actually been as far behind as you. I think in terms of cases, I know we were like 10 to 14 days behind you in terms of how steep it was rising. And that was what made me think, oh, listen, we've got to get everyone ready for this, because the UK looked like it's going into lockdown. And then I was trying to get the Aussie clients ready for this. But so we made some progress by March, right? We started to get all the habits in place. But then, to cut a long story short, COVID happened. And as usual, you're a human being. Self-destruction sort of happened a little bit, didn't it? Let's talk a bit about that.
Yeah, I had a holiday planned with my mum. We were due to go to Barbados 3 days after lockdown kicked in the UK, and I was gearing up for the holiday. So that was, I think, the diet that we'd sort of been implementing. That was the goal we were working towards. And you know what it's like, you're so excited to go away. I was in denial that COVID would actually prevent any of that. I think we had no idea quite how far-reaching the impacts of this were going to be. So to have holiday cancelled, and then I think a couple of weeks later, my sister postponed and then cancelled her own wedding. So I was then no longer a bridesmaid, and we didn't have that to look forward to. And it was like the domino effect of like everything just being wiped out, the social calendar. And it was quite nice to have a couple of days where I wasn't on the diet, yay, I don't have something to work towards anymore, sorry. But then as that goes on, like weekend after weekend, I can't just sit in that type of lack of routine. It doesn't really do my mental health any favors, and it definitely didn't do my physical health any favors. I don't really need to be having a bottle of wine every weekend, although it was helping soothe the lockdown boredom. So
you're human after all, right?
Yeah, I think a couple of weeks off maybe did me some good, but I could see over the long term that was just going to be a bit of a train smash. I think you could see it too. So at that point, you sort of reined me in, and that was when we started talking about a goal that I could work towards. Yeah,
awesome. And now, obviously, what ended up happening was the prep for the shoot. So I had this idea sort of mid-May in lockdown. I think I was just scrolling Instagram and I seen another personal trainer had all these cool photos of his shoot that he done. He put up a cool quote with a shredded pic. And I was like, you know what? I haven't done a photo shoot in a few years. Like, why don't we try to get the group to do one now? So I came to all the clients. I was like, listen, whether lockdowns happen or not, I would like to do a photo shoot this year. I'm going to diet for one. Who wants to join me? Because you're never going to get the opportunity to do it where I'm going through the pain at the same time as you. Normally I'm sitting here and I'm like off season eating high calories, trying to build muscle when people are dieting down for these things. So I said, like, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. I think we had 16 clients signed up. A couple dropped out along the way. We ended up with about 10 people internationally. We had you do it in the UK. We had Nick do it in Malaysia. We had the Perth crew do it all as a group because obviously we could because of COVID. But let's talk about the mindset needed, and we'll go into your like key principles later. But how did it feel doing that online whenever so many of the team members were based over here in Perth doing it for the same weekend?
Well, I just want to say, first of all, I very nearly didn't do it. I very nearly taught myself out. It took me a while to come around to the idea of photo shoots. Yeah, I mean, right out my comfort zone. And although it's something I kind of thought, oh, well, that would be fun to do, I really doubted whether I could. I remember sitting in the car one evening, being quite torn about it and speaking to a friend, and they had previously pulled out of a bodybuilding show themselves, so they sort of understood what prep meant, what the commitment level was. And they were saying to me, like, if you're this stressed about it now, if it's weighing this heavy on you at this moment in time before you've even committed, then it's not for you, because that type of pressure will just crush you and you won't enjoy the process. And that stuck with me for a couple of days, but I'm not sure what wore off. I think just seeing the opportunity, and I wanted to. I'm quite a driven and ambitious person when it suits me. So I think I kind of wanted that challenge, and I said yes, okay, I commit. And then the blinkers were on, and I pleasantly surprised myself with how I stuck to the plan. But the community, like the community team OMC, that really helped. Yeah. I don't think we can underestimate how much that support meant, possibly more so because we were in a lockdown situation, right? So I'm not getting to see my friends like normal. I'm not really getting to share things with them like I would if we were out for dinner every second weekend. Plus, they're not always into the same things that you are. So dieting for a photo shoot, that type of commitment, I actually didn't tell any of them that I was doing the shoot. I kept it a complete secret. But being able to come online, have sessions like this, meet in the Facebook group. I've made some good friends through the sessions that you've hosted. We communicate over Instagram and stuff now quite regularly. That's a really invaluable source just to keep you on track. It's sort of an added layer of accountability, but it also just brings a really nice social element, which I was lacking throughout lockdown. People going through the same issues, people excited about the same things. And it's cool to have friends that are on the complete opposite side of the world from you that you've never really met before.
Yeah, exactly. And that's like, that shows the power of community. The old saying of, you surround yourself with, 5 deadbeats, you're going to be a deadbeat too, versus a millionaire, you're going to be the next millionaire, right? Like, so that's what we try to create with the atmosphere in the group. It's like everyone supporting each other, everyone welcoming each other. On this call right now, we've got 7 people here who came on just to listen to your story, right? Like, I've paid for experts to come in and do talks that we haven't had this many people in the one session. A lot of people do the catch-ups. So it shows the power of this community and that everyone's got each other's back. And whenever you've got a community like that, it's massive. And that's obviously something that we developed during lockdowns that have continued with the huddles, as I like to call them, where we get together every 7 to 14 days. And when we do the big trainings like this and big hot seats, different things to keep the group all connected. So yeah, that's awesome that you got that amount of benefit from it. Mentally, how did it feel doing the prep during that extended lockdown? Because you were seeing everyone else in the group. When we opened up in Perth here, June, and we had a solid run until this week just passed, where we were open from last June, where you had to prep from, it was probably May, June time when we actually decided to do the shoot. May, June time until September to actually nail it. So how did that feel doing most of that in lockdown when you only had, I think, 3 weeks at the very end when gyms opened?
Yeah, so for anyone not UK based on the call, we have been pretty much in proper lockdown, maybe with the exception of a few weeks here and there, but gyms were closed for the majority of that time, masks everywhere, no restaurants open, no socializing. So it's been quite intense. But I have to say, I don't know, mentally, I found it a lot more, I don't want to say easy because there was definitely days that was quite difficult, but I found it gave me such a focus that I was able to kind of block out some of the annoyance, some of the frustration, some of the anger that I would have maybe felt if I didn't have that goal. I've often thought, would I have been able to have achieved as much as I did without lockdown? If I was being invited out for dinner with my friends, would I have been able to stick to the plan as much? So in a weird way, maybe the lockdown was a bit of a blessing because it gave me an excuse to be completely selfish and just focus on that goal. But I did need that to pull me out. I needed the photo shoot to be what I poured my energy into, because as soon as the shoot was over and we went back into lockdown, I then felt the mental strain that all my friends had felt when we started in March. Yeah. Like, I was then feeling really low, frustrated, angry at how the government was handling things, and everyone was sort of like, yeah, Mairi, we've been through this all before. But I felt so different during the first lockdown because I had that goal. I was doing my steps every day, hitting that target. I was doing my workouts, hitting my macros, and I guess not that much changed after the shoot, but just having that as my main focus really helped keep me positive, I would say. And as soon as that was gone, I did notice such a difference in my ability to stay positive, because the outlook felt a lot bleaker then.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, judging by what you said, two things that really stand out to me is, one, you really had the blinkers on and you had that laser focus on the goal, which if you want something big like a photo shoot, like if you just want to lose a couple of kilos, great. Like, you need a certain amount of focus, but you can get away with a little bit more. If you want to do something where you're getting dressed up in swimwear, loungewear, lingerie sort of shoots, like, you need to be on this. You're presenting your body and what is like a forever memory with a photo, right? Same way with somebody who wants to compete on stage, you got those eyes on you. Obviously with the photos, it's your choice as to whether you actually want to share them, but you want to get in the best shape possible for that shoot. So you need that focus. But also what you said, which really, resonated with me just now, is that you turned the negative of the lockdown, which got you for a couple of weeks. And yes, we got the habits back on track before we really committed to this shoot. But you turned the negative into a positive, and then you sort of flipped it as being like, well, hang on, I still can go for my walk every day and nail my steps. I'd given you all the workouts you needed to do from home with bands, dumbbells, kettlebells, whatever you picked up along the way. So you framed that in your head as, well, hang on, I'm lucky enough that I get to do this without being distracted, rather than think, oh fuck, I got to do a prep as well as lockdown and all this negativity. You just flipped it on, like, well, I get to do this and it's kind of different this way.
Yeah, I have a different appreciation for people that could do a full prep in a normal circumstance, declining invites for dinners with friends or socializing, birthdays, whatever. There's always going to be something throughout the year. But yeah, in a weird way, lockdown was maybe a blessing because it gave me complete permission to selfishly focus on myself in that way.
Yeah, perfect. And talking about something you brought up in the last one, we're talking about, your year, and you were talking about the doubt that was crept in from that friend who obviously was trying to help you in that situation by saying, listen, you don't sound like you're fully in this. It's going to cause extra stress if you're stressing about it now. How do you think that you overcame this? Because obviously there's going to be people on this call, there's going to be people who are listening. I think a lot of people are into physique development. A lot of people will want to do photo shoots. Now, one thing you need to have enough training background. You need to know how to train. You need to be in a decent place for your calories and all that. But you also need to have low stress. You need to have the right mindset for it. Like, some people listening to this would just crumble if they were allowed to do a photo shoot before they're ready, So I'm very selective with who I let do that. But how did you get around those barriers? Like, you had me telling you, no, Mari, you can do this. Like, you're in a position where I think you can do this, but you had the doubts coming in from elsewhere. So how did you get around that personally?
I think I know myself. I know what I'm like, and I do quite enjoy a challenge. The year before, it was probably working towards getting a promotion at work, so I was trying to tick all the boxes and extracurricular work activities to get me there. There wasn't really anything on my personal challenge calendar for last year that was getting me excited, and I think I just thought, like, why not? Let's just throw myself in, and give it a go. And then when I started to see the progress, when I started to see my physique changing and my confidence was growing with that, it kind of became addictive. So then following the plan became a little bit easier because you know it's going to pay off in the end.
Yep.
So once I was kind of brave enough to take the leap and commit to doing the shoot, I feel like it was a positive self-fulfilling prophecy at that point, because I really wanted to see it through, and the negativity kind of fell away. I mean, don't get me wrong, I had one or two wobbly days where I was sort of not sure how things were going to turn out, and having not done a shoot before, I really wasn't sure what to expect. I think I changed my outfit choices several times as my physique changed over the months. I was really worried before I started that I would compare myself to other people, because I have struggled with that in the past, really just being overly harsh with myself or critical. And you don't always see like the good progress that you've made, but
Yep.
I had just never seen my body change like this before, and that was enough to kind of keep me satisfied and on track. And thankfully, I don't think the self-doubt came in as much as I was expecting initially.
Yeah, yeah. And I think everyone will have self-doubt, mate, and everyone is in this scenario of self-comparison, right? Instagram is a highlight reel. You're looking at pro bodybuilders, you're looking at people who've done photo shoots before, people who've done preps before, maybe people who are very close to what would be considered an elite body, and all these models and influencers and Instagrammers. Like, we are comparing ourselves to all these other people, right? And people will look at us and the stuff we've achieved, and they will be doubting whether they can achieve, the photo shoot standard that we set with the photo shoots that we done. And it doesn't matter, like, people will always have somebody who they see as better than them, or somebody that they always compare themselves to. So what's your tips for around using social media, and how did you flip that, or what did you do to remove that self-doubt and stop comparing yourself to other people?
It's a good question. I don't know if I have a good answer, because it's something that does from time to time, I think, just grab a hold of you.
Yep.
I don't know. I think I've become a lot more mature in my social media use over the years. It definitely used to consume you to an unhealthy point. There's still so much garbage information out there as well. You've just got to be really careful what you let your mind consume. But for me, I've started to focus on physiques that are, I guess, attainable for me. I do remember you saying, don't compare yourself to a bodybuilder, because that's obviously not your background and that's not your goal.
Yep.
And I remember thinking in my head, but why not? Why can I not look like that? Almost like I'm ready for that challenge, but it's a completely different regime. That wasn't what we were working towards.
Yeah.
Although, funnily, a lot of people thought that's what I was doing, because I didn't tell them I was doing a shoot, but I had dropped some hints that I was doing something exciting, and a lot of people jumped to that conclusion.
Okay.
But I don't know what the trick is to managing social media. I think be careful with who you follow. It's refreshing to see now that there's a lot more people posting real images of themselves, either unfiltered or unphotoshopped. A lot of athletes showing the difference of a posed figure to just standing normally. That's
Yep.
refreshing to see, and that would have maybe done me a lot of good seeing that a lot of years ago, because several years ago I did find the comparison thing a lot harder. But I'm really proud at what I achieved, and I just have to remember what I looked like several years ago and what I looked like on the day of the shoot, and that's kind of good enough for me now.
Yep.
So a lot of who I follow are my next physique goals, people that I look at and I think, okay, so what's their current routine? What are they doing? And
Yep.
if that's what I want to look like, can I take steps to kind of get there?
Perfect. And we will talk about those goals and keep aiming for that as we see what develops this year, obviously with COVID and that. But let's talk about, we talked about the challenges, we talked about everything else. So before we get into like the key principles of like nutrition, mindset and training, and talk about, you know, what your big takeaways are, what, talk about the shoot. Let's talk about the shoot. Like, what was the actual day like? So you're in Edinburgh, you traveled down to Cardiff, I think, for the shoot with Anna Kell.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Talk about that, because she is an in-demand photographer. She does some awesome shots, and I think because of the standard of that, you kind of were like, oh, can I actually do this type of shoot with her as well? Let's talk about the whole experience on the day and everything that went into it.
Okay, it's such a happy memory. Like it was such a special time. But yeah, you're right. The type of shoots that she does, they are quite varied, but body types mostly athletic or sort of glamour girls. So she definitely has a sort of particular image in high in demand as well. So I did have to book her quite in advance. And I think she was doing one date in Scotland that filled up within a couple of hours. So the option was for me to go down to Wales. So I just kind of made it the equivalent of a holiday weekend in my head, and probably ended up costing the same as a holiday weekend. But I took my sister with me. We rented a car. We drove down because lockdown, you couldn't fly. But that was a treat in itself. So I treated myself to a nice car for the weekend. Got my tan and everything done in Edinburgh, which was quite an event. We stayed overnight, and then on the day of the shoot, got my hair done at the hairdressers, got my makeup done at the studio, and then met AK herself, who I was actually quite nervous to meet. It's a bit of an intimidating situation. Like it's not something I've ever done before, having seen what she's able to produce, and she works with models and, like I say, bodybuilders. So I just wasn't really sure how the interactions were going to go with her, but she made me feel at ease straight away. And when the makeup artist showed me my makeup, I just could not believe that that was what I looked like. Put on my first outfit, and the photographer said, you know, there's a big mirror there, take 5 minutes, do your selfies, get your content. And I was just standing like jaw hitting the floor. I couldn't believe that that was what I looked like. She was asking if I had done this before, and I was sort of looking at her thinking, can you not tell by my reaction? I've never looked like this in my life before. But she made me feel really special, just like $1,000,000. I had 4 outfits. I think I'd taken 5 with me, but 4 that I knew I definitely wanted to shoot in. She put me in the poses, encouraged me, kept showing me on her own camera periodically what they were looking like. I was just in disbelief. I just couldn't believe that that was what I looked like. I mean, I was on absolute cloud 9. She spent longer with me than expected. I think most people got about an hour, but she had no other bookings after me. So I think I got about 90 minutes of her time, maybe even longer. Wow. And yeah, it just, the whole event, it could not have gone better. I'm quite a worrier. So even just booking a hairdresser and a makeup artist in a different country that I didn't know if they were going to do a good job or not. I'm not the best at explaining what I want either. So the fact that everything in succession had gone well, it was just such a relief. And I got out of the shoot, went back to the hotel, had a huge slab of cookies with my sister. I was ready for some post-shoot treats, and I FaceTimed a few people, and they were just like, wow, who's that? I didn't look like myself. Went out for a nice dinner and then just enjoyed some drinks with my sister, and we drove back home the following day and then did a sort of celebration here in Edinburgh. But yeah, it just, like I say, on cloud 9 the whole day. I felt so good in myself, and I was aware that, you know, sometimes as a girl, you just have days where you wake up, and maybe guys get this too, but you just wake up and you just don't like how your body looks, or your hair just doesn't do the right thing, or sometimes you just don't have a good body day. And I was really aware that the photo shoot day might have been one of those. But thankfully, everything fell into place and I felt amazing. It was so good.
Perfect, mate. Like, you can see, and I can actually see a couple of the other team members' cameras now, and they're all smiling when you're talking about how much you enjoyed that day. Like, it's just infectious, like that happiness and that energy you're giving out right now. That's awesome. So I think, like, in terms of the challenges, the diet and the training, doing your steps, doing, workouts indoors, inside. I think you were in an apartment at the time in Edinburgh, having to go outside for your workouts or walk. You kind of had to decide based on the day what was going to be more beneficial to you. Like everything that you had to do through, and let's face it, Scotland doesn't have the best weather for most of the year. So anything you got outside to do was more than likely going to be in rain, apart from the 2 weeks of summer you probably had. So all that stuff, like everything you went through, it was worth it in the end.
Absolutely. And I made more progress at home using the bands and stuff than I thought I would. I guess that was a bit of a gamble for both of us, really prepping for a shoot without access to a gym. I don't know if either of us knew what to expect in terms of the outcome. We didn't know when the gyms might reopen. But yeah, I was used to doing like quite intense cardio when the gyms were open before we even worked together. And I was used to really hammering heavy weights. So the thought of making progress at home with a rubber band was just so alien to me. Like, how on earth, how can I lean out? I can't even do proper cardio. Where's my Stairmaster? I'm not going to do sprints in the park. Like, I don't know. I really didn't expect things to go as well as they did. But maybe it was a combination of a few things. It was a less stress environment. I had a lot more time to dedicate to things. I was hitting 10,000 steps, 12,000 steps, which I definitely wasn't doing before in the office. So yeah, I feel like the home workouts were a pleasant surprise. I didn't expect them to reap as many benefits as they did. But I was, standing in front of the camera on that day, I was just like, thank goodness I ticked every box. It was all worth it. All the hangry mood swings were worth it.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I think you just said there, like ticking every box. And that's what I try to drill in with everyone, that there's probably 5 or 6 boxes that you need to think about to maximize everything. And that's going to be your training, your steps, any cardio you need to do, nutrition, digestion, and probably sleep as well. Well, mainly sleep, but I think that's the last one. So we're talking about like 6 things that if they all go pretty well, the process is pretty smooth. And a lot of the time it's just down to putting the trust in the program. Like you said, you were kind of doubtful as to whether you could actually do it. You were kind of doubtful as to, training with bands when you're used to training hard and heavy so much and doing, lots of hard, intense, sweat your eyebrows off sort of cardio. Like you're used to doing all that. And then suddenly you're told, no, just hit your steps, do these banded workouts. Maybe we'll add in a little bit of HIIT workout outside or something to mix it up to make things fun for you. But it's a lot different to what you had to do. So let's get into that, because we're probably, I'm not even sure how long we've been on now, probably about 40, 45 minutes. But let's talk about training, because we're talking about that. Let's talk about the 3 things, or the 3 top tips, or the 3 main things that you did during lockdown to get such a fabulous transformation that you would recommend to people to do now.
I think the first one I'll say, like you did mention steps there. So I think it depends on your lifestyle, but when I was in the office, I definitely wasn't moving as frequently throughout the day. Maybe a lunchtime walk, if I was able to get away from the desk. But most of my cardio was just half an hour on the Stairmaster at the gym in the evening. And I think, weirdly, lockdown probably made me move more, because I consciously would take a break away from the desk and I would go and do a walk at lunchtime. And then that's not enough to get my 12,000 steps. So I would then do at least an hour and a half walk in the evening. And just that overall increase in activity, I think, really helped. So if nothing else, just for your mental health, get away from the desk whenever you can.
Yeah,
I think tempo in your training program. So before we worked together, I definitely had a bad habit of just pounding out as many reps as fast as possible to get it over and done with. But when you're at home with limited equipment, how you train really matters. So when you gave me the programs and it was like tempo, like down for 3, pause for 1, up for 2, I was like, this is taking forever. A workout is taking me so long. But that's a different type of training, and I found that to be very effective. And in turn, which is maybe the third thing, I think that really helped with mind muscle connection, which I didn't really rate that much before lockdown. I kind of thought not very much of it. But I found that then when I went back to the gym after lockdown, because of all the home workouts with the bands, I felt like I was getting a lot more out of the weights that I was using in the gym, bearing in mind they had completely reduced because I hadn't been in a gym for about 6 months.
Yeah.
But yeah, actually executing the plan that you'd given me in terms of the tempo, and in turn that helped with mind muscle connection, which I think, yeah, was an unexpected benefit from the lockdown situation.
Yeah, awesome. And let's spin that round to nutrition now. So what were the three main things that you learned about food for yourself personally during this time?
Um, Find what you like that fits your macros and just stick with it.
Yeah.
I'm the type of person, I'm quite happy to eat similar meals again and again and again. So if I find a lunch that suits my requirements, I'll probably eat that for 6 weeks and then move on to something else for the next 6 weeks.
Yeah.
So I would almost have like my set days. So this is my dinner on a Monday, dinner on a Tuesday, Wednesday, and that would be my week. And then I just keep repeating. So find what
Yeah.
works for you. Repeat, but it has to be enjoyable. I can't force myself to eat something I don't enjoy. And I think that's what's good about what you gave me. It was macros to hit rather than a meal plan. So I wasn't really getting fed up of the same things.
Yeah.
I would say that's maybe one of the things that didn't work out for me well the first time we trained together, because you did enable me to do if it fits your macros approach, but I didn't have the knowledge to do that well back then.
Yeah.
Whereas now I think I do understand. I mean, I got the concept back then, but my execution was terrible. And I remember snacking on like a ball of mozzarella on the bus home from work one day because we were trying to do keto, and in theory it would have fit the keto requirements. But looking back at that now, I'm like, oh my goodness, what was wrong with me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's all I would have to say on nutrition, really. It depends what kind of person you are. Like, obviously, you publish the cookbooks every month. So some people might like completely changing their diet and still hitting the macros. But for me, the safest approach was kind of play it safe, prep ahead so that you've got minimal opportunities to go off plan and snack. And yeah, just keep repeating what works for you.
Yeah, 100%. And that's something that I do as well, mate. As I said, I do it on a weekly basis. So if my calories change, I then decide what I'm going to eat to fit in. Oh, fancy some pineapple for carbs this week. Let's put some in. What needs to change? Do take something else out? And I set it up for the week, and I'm like, right, cool, these are my meals, and they'll stay that way until the food changes or I get sick of something. So I think that's the best way to do flexible diet, in my opinion, is don't eat on the go. It's sort of like find what you like, find a bit of structure, a bit of a meal plan, but it's a meal plan that isn't me telling Mairi, eat 100 grams of steak, eat 150 grams of rice. It's Mairi saying, I fancy a bit of steak tonight. What I need to do to fit steak in. You know what I mean? And then, or steak this week, or salmon this week, whatever it is. So yeah, I would agree 100% with that. Let's talk. I think we're going to ditch the lifestyle, because I think the lifestyle, really, it was during COVID. So it was we've kind of nailed everything with that, in terms of you were limited in what you could do. So it's not like the same as now. Well, now you're still in lockdown, I guess, but whenever you come out of lockdown, and if you've done another cut, it's going to be different. That's when you're going to learn more about how to manage your lifestyle. But I think mindset is a massive one, because COVID and lockdowns are tough on people as it is, never mind throwing in a prep on top. So what would be the three biggest takeaways or three biggest lessons that you personally learned about yourself or about the process that people can take on board with this?
The first thing was just having a goal. So I have worked towards things before, but it felt kind of futile. Like if you don't have a goal, like a photo shoot or a holiday or something in particular that's quite specific, I used to find, the consequence of checking in after a bad week. Well, what's really the big deal if I have been off plan all week? The only person I'm hurting is my own progress, so it's not really that big of a deal. But having a goal like a photo shoot, like you say, where you're going to be exposed, standing in front of a camera, that type of goal really helped just fix my mindset on something. If you're having a crappy day, it doesn't really matter. You still have to do the necessary and get those boxes ticked. And as soon as that goal was out the way, like I say, that was when I really felt a mental dip. So I would really advise people to set a goal, big or small, but something that you will actually push yourself to achieve. And I found that really helped me just stay sane in lockdown. It was really important. Secondly, I would say surround yourself with the right people. So we spoke about the community that we have here, which is really helpful. But I had a really supportive network around me. My friends who didn't even know what I was prepping for knew I was doing something, and they would send me nice messages and check in. My sister was very supportive. My partner, he was really supportive as well, dealing with some of the mood swings and sorting me out with a coffee when he knew I needed one, and things like that. Having people that really want the best for you, who will put up with maybe short-term pain because they can see the long-term gain, that made a real difference. But for me personally, I think the third thing is telling yourself that you can do it. How lame it sounds, but when I started to see the progress, like that was enough for me to just stick to the plan. I'd heard a lot of people using the phrase "trust the process" previously, and that used to really rub me the wrong way. Because I used to think, oh, well, it's okay for you because you've got a body without a diagnosis, or it's okay for you because you were born really skinny, or whatever. You make up the victim mentality excuses. But then as soon as I started to see progress in whatever way, whether it was losing weight or the outfits fitting differently, that was enough to keep my mindset positive. So those three things for me: set yourself a goal, put yourself in a good environment, and believe in yourself.
Believe in yourself, and I think celebrate those small wins along the way. If something does feel better, like you said, or you've had a good workout or a good day, enjoy that feeling, right?
Absolutely. Well done for not drinking another bottle of wine this weekend.
And that's a big habit, mate. I think you're very, very a very normal person. You have cravings, you have bad days, you have good days, you've got a stressful job, you've got days where you won't want to train, you days where you're going to say, fuck it, I want to order a pizza, just like everyone does, and I think people will take a lot out of the stuff you've shared, the journey, and also those little action points of these are the key principles that I've learned along the way. So mate, this has been awesome. Let's try to wrap it up because I know you're probably a bit short on time now. So if somebody is listening to this, either on the team who's just joined, somebody who's seasoned, who is thinking about doing a photo shoot, or somebody let's say just somebody who's in the same place you were actually, like before you joined the team last year, what's the advice that you would give them?
Start now. Like, you've got absolutely nothing to lose. And I look back and think, imagine I hadn't wasted all those years faffing about and not asking for help and just being, complacent and plodding along. If someone is at that stage where they're debating whether they can or they can't, just try, and they might be very pleasantly surprised at what happens. If they're already in touch with you, then they've got all the tools at their disposal to do really well. The community's here, you've got the knowledge, the plans are there, lockdown or not. We've seen successes across the team. I would urge people just to push themselves. Like, now's the best time you're going to have, so let's just do it.
Yep, absolutely, mate. That's a big one. So people on the call actually, and people listening, will want to know what's next for you. What's your big goals for this year? Obviously still in lockdown. I think it's going to be still a while. It's going to be at least another few weeks, if not a month or so for you guys, right? So what is your goals for the year? What do you want to achieve, and where's your head at now versus when you finish the shoot?
A goal for this year, I'd absolutely love to get on a plane and flee the country, go for a holiday. But I'm not banking on that. So this is the first sort of growing phase, structured growth that I've ever done. So at the moment, trying to get calories up to a decent amount to then potentially cut if that's what we decide to do. Just really following your guidance, I guess. There's elements of my physique that I definitely want to improve on from last year. Having leaned down, it sort of lets you see areas that you might want to focus on. So we have a plan in place for that. But yeah, I guess really it's taking each month as it comes, not knowing whether we're going to be set free or not in terms of the pandemic. But yeah, I feel mindset wise, having done the photo shoot last year, I'm really confident in the ability that I've got in myself to do what I need to do to get to where I want. And I feel like you and I have sort of nailed, like we've spoken about before, the coaching relationship now. So
Yeah.
we're in a good place to level up as well.
Yeah, 100%, man. I think that's a good point to finish on as well, because the coaching relationship is key. Like, you've got to have trust in the coach's knowledge. I'm not just talking about me, I'm talking about whoever you hire. And you got to have trust that coach is going to pull you up on your bullshit, is going to be honest with you. If you say, I want to do a photo shoot, the coach can obviously turn around and say, no, I don't think you're ready for it. Like, and you need to have that honesty and that relationship. Same way now that if you decided you wanted to cut again, I'll probably turn around and say, no, Mario, your calories aren't high enough. Like, you're just going to end up wrecking yourself if you decide to do a serious cut again. And there's nothing really to cut for at the moment, which we've obviously spoke about. Like, you can't get on a plane yet. You know, summer's still a good bit away. You still are in good shape now that if summer does come along, you can still go away and rock a bikini if you do get a last minute holiday. So it's not really that need to do a big mad shred, you know what I mean? So yeah, I think everyone needs to come out of these photo shoots and, you know, embrace the growth phase and have that relationship with their coach where they trust what they're doing with the calories, trust what they're doing with your mindset and your body, really. So yeah, that's a big point. But is there anything else you'd like to finish on? Any kind of wise words or any last statements?
Just a thanks. I think what we did last year together really like elevated 2020 from what could have been one of the worst years to what was possibly one of my best years. So yeah, I would encourage other people to just sort of take that leap, challenge themselves, use you and the community as you set it up. But yeah, just a thanks to you and the rest of the team, because I really enjoyed last year. I've really enjoyed this ever. And thank you everyone for tuning in. It's been really nice to share my experiences so far, and I'm looking forward to the others that we host.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Well, I can't thank you enough for coming on. It's been great for the guys who are on the call. Hopefully people on the podcast who are listening will get a lot out of this, and they'll, you know, screenshot it, tag me in it. Guys, if you want to tag Mairi in it as well. Mairi, what's your Instagram username?
I think it's Muz at the moment, but you'll find me if you just search my name.
Yep, perfect. So thank you, Mairi. I'm going to end the recording here and we're going to do a quick chat with the team.
Thanks for listening to The O Show with your host, Oren McCory. If you liked this episode, then please subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening and share this on your social media. We'll see you on the next episode for more no-nonsense advice to help you supercharge your efforts in the gym, in the kitchen, and most importantly, in your head. See you then.